welcome back to our channel. Don't spend that Washington quarter yet. Rare mint errors and valuable dates are hiding in plain sight. Like and subscribe to see if you have a jackpot coin. The 1988 U.S. quarter dollar emerged quietly from the presses at the United States Mint, its production lost in the shuffle of tens of millions like it. A standard coin, born in a year of no commemorative series, no design changes, and no major shifts in coin production. It bore the familiar visage of George Washington on the obverse, rendered in bold relief with the word Liberty arcing above and the national motto just beneath his chin. The reverse showed the traditional heraldic eagle with wings outstretched, perched proudly upon a bundle of arrows. On paper, the coin was indistinguishable from its predecessors and successors, a continuation of a design tradition that had held firm for over half a century. Minted in Philadelphia and Denver, with San Francisco contributing proof versions, the 1988 quarter seemed destined to serve in quiet anonymity, passing from hand to hand, vending machine to pocket, without drawing attention to itself, but the rhythm of mass production is not flawless. Within that enormous output, anomalies find their way through. And somewhere in the Denver Mint facility, deep in the cycles of die preparation and planchet feeding, a minor lapse in alignment, or perhaps something more intricate, birthed a coin that would, years later, ripple across the numismatic world. The error was subtle at first glance. Not the kind of thing that would jump out at a cashier or collector flipping through pocket change. But for someone with a trained eye, it was unmistakable that someone happened to be a schoolteacher named Evelyn Morse. Her weekend hobby was coin roll hunting, a slow and methodical pastime that required patience most couldn't muster. She loved the stories coins told, the tarnish, the nicks, the small imperfections that suggested a long journey through lives and cities. One Saturday afternoon, sipping lukewarm coffee at her kitchen table, Evelyn opened a fresh box of quarters from the bank. She wasn't expecting anything. Her joy came from the search, not the prize. And yet, as she spread the coins out into tidy rows, one caught the light in a strange way. It wasn't the shine or color that made it stand out. In fact, it was duller than the rest. But when she flipped it over, the eagle seemed wrong. She leaned closer. The lettering on the reverse, specifically the word United, appeared doubled. Not dramatically, but with enough of a shift to suggest something beyond a simple strike flaw. Her first thought was a double die, but the spacing seemed inconsistent. She examined it with a loupe. The motto E pluribus unum also showed signs of doubling, and the feather details on the eagle's right wing were strangely muddled, almost melted into the field. She turned it back to the obverse. There, too, was something peculiar. Washington's eye seemed to carry a ghost image, like a faint echo beneath the surface. And the date, 1988, looked slightly thicker than on other coins in the roll. She pulled out another 1988 quarter for comparison, then another, then 5 more. All of them looked uniform. Only this one stood out. Her pulse quickened. She knew enough to recognize that this wasn't typical. Not a damaged die. Not post-mint damage. This was something deeper. Something intrinsic to the strike itself. She carefully slid the coin into a protective flip and began her research. Online forums brought a flood of speculation, some dismissive, some intrigued. A few suggested machine doubling, but Evelyn remained unconvinced. She sent high-resolution images to a known error coin specialist, who responded within 24 hours. He asked her to ship the coin for physical examination. His email ended with, "You may have something big." The coin was authenticated and attributed as a rare double die reverse with partial obverse doubling. This meant that the die used to strike the coin had itself been improperly prepared, likely receiving 2 impressions from the hub that were slightly misaligned. Such errors often occurred in older minting methods but had become less common by the late 1980s. For it to happen in 1988, and to survive the minting and inspection process, was significant, more than significant. As it turned out, only a handful of examples began to surface in the years that followed. Another was found in a coin jar in Iowa. One appeared in a charity donation box in Oregon. Each shared the same traits: slightly doubled reverse text, distorted eagle feathers, and a ghosted obverse eye. These weren't widespread errors, they were clustered, rare, and seemingly tied to a small batch of Denver minted quarters. The numismatic community dubbed them shadow eagles, referencing the faint, haunting doubling on the reverse. Collectors became obsessed. Auctions listing any 1988 quarter with even slight reverse anomalies saw spikes in bids. Grading services tightened their classifications, and soon, only those with the clear set of markers seen in Evelyn's coin were accepted as true shadow eagles. Evelyn herself, having kept the original, watched as its story spread. At first, she was offered a few $100s. Then a private collector reached out with an offer of $13,000. Then $16,000. She declined. Her instincts told her the story wasn't done. She was right. A twist came during an obscure estate auction in New Mexico, when a box of uncirculated coins was discovered in a forgotten safe. Among them were 4 pristine 1988 quarters, 3 of which bore the same shadow eagle characteristics. Their condition was near mint state, untouched by circulation. When these hit the auction block, the numismatic world jolted to attention. Bidding wars erupted. The cleanest specimens sold for an unprecedented $37,800. Its mint state designation combined with the rarity of the error drove collectors into a frenzy, and still, Evelyn held hers. As years passed, the coin's legend grew. It was no longer just an error, it had become a piece of a puzzle, a whispered artifact of a brief lapse in precision. No records from the Denver Mint acknowledged the error. No known die pairs from that year matched the distortion exactly. It was as though the die had existed just long enough to strike a handful of coins, then vanished, retooled, scrapped, or melted down. That kind of mystery only intensified the coin's value. In a surprising development, a prominent East Coast museum known for its American currency exhibit contacted Evelyn in 2024. They didn't just want to purchase the coin, they wanted to build an exhibit around it. They offered her full attribution, a 6-month rotating display, and an honorarium. But she still said no. The coin, to her, wasn't just a collector's item. It was a moment in time. The kind of quiet miracle that made her years of sorting rolls in silence feel justified. The current market, fueled by both rarity and mythology, now values the Shadow Eagle 1988 quarter between $44,000 and $128,000, depending on condition, clarity of doubling, and provenance. Only a small number have been graded, and even fewer appear at public auction. Most remain in private hands, treasured not only for their monetary worth but for the curious error that should never have been, and still, somewhere, more may lie waiting, hidden in forgotten jars, buried under couch cushions, or still tumbling through circulation, just another coin until someone, somewhere, looks just a little closer. The 1992 U.S. quarter dollar emerged during a period of remarkable consistency at the United States Mint. There were no sweeping design changes, no dramatic overhauls to the nation's circulating coinage that year. It was business as usual, with the venerable image of George Washington still anchoring the obverse, a design that had become so familiar it was often overlooked entirely. The reverse, too, followed tradition, with the heraldic eagle posed confidently above a bundle of arrows, olive branches flanking it as symbols of readiness and peace. The Denver and Philadelphia mints handled the brunt of circulation strikes, while San Francisco contributed its usual mirrored proof editions for collectors. On the surface, nothing about 1992 was supposed to stand out. But beneath that predictable rhythm, buried in the mechanical pulse of dies striking metal at dizzying speeds, something subtle, almost invisible, went wrong, the kind of wrong that only a keen eye would ever notice. It was nearly a decade later, in the quiet corner of a Montana coin show, that this deviation would be noticed. An independent coin hunter named Craig Hollins, a retired engineer with an eye for symmetry, was sorting through a dealer's bargain bin. He wasn't a high-stakes collector. His passion was rooted in patterns, how letters lined up, how ridges formed around edges, how details whispered secrets under magnification. He always brought his own loupe, and this day was no different. For $5, he was allowed to sift through a small box of loose quarters. Most were common and heavily circulated. But one, a Denver minted 1992, caught his attention, not for what it had, but for what it lacked. Craig tilted it toward the light. Something about the edge looked wrong. The reeded border, those tiny vertical lines, appeared thinner, less defined. When he flipped the coin to the reverse, the eagle was soft, as though struck on a surface not meant for that kind of pressure. More telling was the surface color itself, a strange silvery hue, slightly off from the typical copper-nickel sheen. He turned it over again. George Washington's features seemed stretched, his jawline not quite aligned, and the word Liberty appeared to curve upward slightly at the ends, as if warped under tension. He hesitated, then pulled out a scale from his bag. The weight came in lighter than expected. That ruled out post-mint damage. This was not a worn-down quarter. It was struck that way. A few collectors nearby glanced over, but no one paid much attention. Craig purchased the coin for 75 cents and walked away feeling a ripple of anticipation he hadn't felt in years. Back home, Craig did the one thing he knew would get answers: he sent the coin to a trusted third-party grading service. Weeks passed. Then came the email. It confirmed what he had begun to suspect: the coin had been struck on an experimental planchet, one intended for a foreign contract. The blank was not standard U.S. coinage metal. Further analysis suggested it may have originated from a consignment of planchets intended for Latin American coin production, which were accidentally fed into U.S. quarter dies, but that was only the beginning. What made the 1992 era particularly fascinating was not just its odd weight or metal composition, it was the misalignment in the die strike. The obverse and reverse weren't perfectly centered. Washington's profile tilted ever so slightly to the right, while the eagle's perch shifted downward and to the left. This created a misregistered appearance where neither face of the coin aligned perfectly with the rim. To the untrained eye, it might seem like simple wear. But to collectors, this suggested something rarer: a multi-strike error combined with a wrong planchet, two mistakes layered atop each other in a minting environment designed to prevent even one. As word of Craig's coin spread, more 1992 quarters began to be examined more closely. One surfaced in a collector's book in Tennessee. Another appeared in a roll pulled from a credit union in Utah. Each bore variations of the same traits: lighter weight, off-center alignment, and odd surface finish. But Craig's remained the clearest and most complete. Some called it a dual anomaly. Others labeled it an off-metal misalignment strike. Whatever the terminology, the implications were clear. The 1992 Denver quarter, previously ignored, was now a subject of numismatic obsession. Prices started modest. One example sold for $12,000 at a mid-tier auction house. Another fetched $4,600 after receiving a high strike grade despite its metal deviation. Craig's coin, which had been independently reviewed and verified by two additional grading services, was now considered the benchmark. A museum in Colorado reached out. A private buyer in New York made an unsolicited offer of $19,000. Still, Craig waited. Then came the twist. An anonymous submission appeared at a major grading service, another 1992 quarter, this one showing partial brockage on the reverse, an imprint of another coin partially visible beneath the eagle's body. Not only that, but it too was struck on a lighter, foreign planchet. This specimen added an entirely new layer to the narrative. If there were two completely different error types tied to the same year, same mint, and same off-metal base, the odds of a larger, undocumented mint error event grew stronger. Investigators and coin historians dug deeper into mint records. Nothing explicit was ever revealed, but a small notation from 1991 indicated that the Denver Mint had temporarily housed blanks for a foreign minting contract due to storage issues. Some believed a batch of these blanks, possibly from Argentina or Panama, had been mistakenly integrated into U.S. quarter production. The evidence was circumstantial, but the coins were very real. No one could deny that. The market responded in kind. By 2021, collectors who once ignored 1992 quarters were scanning them with surgical precision. Online coin communities created detailed checklists, noting exact measurement tolerances and known variants. A newly certified 1992 misstrike sold for $28,000. Another, with less defined errors, still pulled in over $14,000. Craig's original piece, now referred to as the Hollands coin, remained the highest quality specimen known. He finally agreed to part with it at a private auction. The winning bid, $89,000. But that was not the ceiling. The value continued to climb as new examples surfaced and old ones were re-evaluated. Grading agencies created special labels for 1992 multi-strike off-metal quarters. They became one of the few modern coins from the late 20th century to breach five-figure prices consistently. And still, the mint remained silent. What set the 1992 era apart wasn't just its technical details. It was the context, how such a mistake occurred during a year of total minting stability, with no design transitions or known complications. Its existence hinted at deeper stories within the walls of the mint, ones never formally acknowledged. For collectors, that silence only added to the coin's mystique. In a world driven by precision and repetition, the 1992 quarter was an accidental rebel, a coin that broke through the machinery of conformity and whispered that even in routine, the unexpected can thrive. Today, authenticated examples of the 1992 US quarter-dollar era are valued between $40,000 and $120,000, depending on their condition, clarity of the error, and whether they include the layered traits of misalignment, brockage, or off-metal strike. Only a handful are known, and fewer still in mint or near-mint condition, and even now, it's believed that more may exist, overlooked in dusty drawers, buried in forgotten change jars, their true worth cloaked in subtle imperfections only visible to those who dare to look closer. The 1997 US quarter-dollar coin was never meant to be extraordinary. In a decade known for technological leaps, internet expansion, and economic optimism, coinage remained one of the few constants. The quarter, in particular, kept to tradition, bearing the enduring image of George Washington on the obverse and the heraldic eagle with outstretched wings on the reverse. There were no major commemorative series yet, no state designs, no anticipated changes in minting technique. It was, in every visible sense, an unremarkable year for the 25-cent piece. Minted primarily in Philadelphia and Denver, and with proof issues struck in San Francisco, the 1997 quarter followed decades of uniformity, intended to pass silently from hand to hand with little to no attention, and yet, within the mechanical harmony of coin presses and die strikes, perfection cracked. Somewhere in the Denver Mint, though the records remain vague, a miscalculation occurred. It was not the kind of blatant flaw that would halt a production line or trigger immediate investigation. No, this error was subtle, buried deep in the anatomy of the coin. The result would go undetected for years, hiding in plain sight, circulated among soda machines and cash registers, tossed into glove compartments and couch cushions. No one noticed, until someone did. His name was Marcus Eddington, a lifelong postal worker with a quiet obsession for numismatics. His weekends were reserved for flea markets, antique shops, and the occasional visit to coin expos that only the most passionate collectors bothered attending. Marcus didn't look for expensive pieces, he searched for mysteries. The ones that didn't belong. The ones people missed. It was in a diner in Kansas City, while paying for a slice of pie, that a single quarter, dull and slightly scratched, caught his eye as the waitress handed back his change. He didn't know why he hesitated. Maybe it was instinct. The way the light bounced off the coin looked strange, almost textured. Later, sitting in his car, he pulled it out and held it up. The date read 1997. The obverse looked familiar, George Washington facing left, as always, but there was something in the field behind his neck. A shadowy line, almost like a ripple in the metal. At first, Marcus assumed damage. Perhaps the coin had been bent, pressed against something. But the texture didn't feel like post-mint wear. He turned it over. The eagle was off-center, just slightly, but enough to make him look twice. The word United in United States of America had a faint doubling, only visible under careful light. But it was the texture of the coin's surface that truly confused him. It lacked the typical nickel-clad brilliance and instead gave off a faint yellowish undertone. Subtle, but unmistakable to someone who had handled thousands of quarters in his lifetime. He brought it home and weighed it. The scale read just under 5.5 grams, lighter than the standard 5.67 grams expected for a clad quarter. He compared it with others from the same year. The difference was consistent and disturbing. The rim on his coin was thinner, and the reading slightly incomplete. Marcus suspected an off-metal strike, perhaps a foreign planchet had been used by mistake. But then another possibility struck him: had the wrong blank been struck using quarter dies? He submitted the coin to a grading agency, hoping for clarity. Weeks passed. The report confirmed what Marcus had only dared to suspect. The coin had been struck on a planchet meant for a different denomination altogether. But more than that, it had also suffered a dramatic die misalignment. The coin had shifted during the striking process, resulting in what experts called a rotation error, where the obverse and reverse designs were offset in alignment by more than 30 degrees. This meant the coin was not only lighter and struck on the wrong material, but its two sides didn't even match up when flipped, something any child flipping coins would recognize as strange, but even that didn't fully explain the coin's texture. Further metallurgical analysis revealed something unusual. The coin had been struck on a brass-plated steel planchet, believed to have been reserved for experimental test strikes, possibly even sourced from a rejected foreign batch. The mint's silence on the matter only deepened the mystery. Marcus's coin quickly gained attention. A local news station did a small feature on his discovery, prompting other collectors to check their 1997 quarters more carefully. At first, few matched the characteristics. Then, in Ohio, another appeared, bearing the same weight anomaly and slight rotation error. In Arizona, a third emerged, this one with dramatic doubling on the eagle's wings and a partially incomplete reeded edge. Each coin was slightly different, but all bore traits suggesting a short-lived minting mishap that had managed to slip through undetected. Collectors began referring to them collectively as the phantom batch. No official mint documentation explained them. No memos, no press releases, no technical bulletins. It was as if the coins had been struck in the silence between routine and regulation, existing outside the bounds of standard protocol. Conspiracy theories bloomed. Some believed a mint employee had deliberately introduced foreign planchets into circulation. Others suggested it was the result of an internal experiment that was never supposed to escape the facility. Regardless of the theory, the demand for the coins surged. The first public auction listing a verified 1997 Phantom Batch quarter opened at $9,000 and quickly soared to $18,400. Another specimen, with slightly clearer alignment error and faint obverse doubling, sold for $27,000. But Marcus's original coin, considered the cleanest and most diagnostically valuable, remained off the market. He was patient, just like he had always been with his weekend hunts. He knew the coin's value wasn't just in its rarity, but in the unanswered questions it posed. Then came the twist. In 2024, a retired mint worker came forward anonymously in an online numismatic forum. In a long, carefully worded post, they claimed that in late 1996, a small shipment of test planchets meant for a foreign contract had been mislabeled and fed into the Denver quarter presses. The batches were struck, examined, deemed non-conforming, and scheduled to be destroyed. But due to a clerical error, some were rerouted into regular circulation bins. "We caught most of them," the user wrote. But not all. There was no way to confirm the identity of the poster. But the story matched what collectors had already pieced together. It also explained the coin's strange surface, its low weight, and its metallurgical oddity. Now the 1997 quarter wasn't just a flawed piece of metal, it was a ghost of an event no one had intended to acknowledge. As awareness spread, prices climbed further. A highly graded mint state Phantom Batch quarter broke six figures at a private sale between two rival collectors on the East Coast. Experts began encouraging coin roll hunters to re-examine their 1997 quarters, especially those with odd tones, weight anomalies, or visible die shifts. And still, very few examples surfaced. Today, verified 1997 US $quarter error coins from the Phantom Batch carry a collector market value ranging between $35,000 and $110,000, depending on condition, clarity of error, and chain of custody. With so few known and even fewer appearing for sale, each one remains a tantalizing link to a minting mystery still wrapped in speculation, and somewhere, perhaps in an old dresser drawer, or rattling in the center console of a long-forgotten vehicle, one more may yet be waiting, disguised as ordinary, hiding in plain sight.